Okay, Mr. Phobes here. This is going to be a little tutorial on how to work in layers for this project. If you look over here, you can see that I've created four layers based on my tetrad. This is a double complement tetrad, and you can see how the different layers work. So the top layer is the red magenta. The second layer is the orange. The third layer is the cyan blue, and the fourth layer is the cyan green. So I'm going to kind of go through how I've accomplished this. Okay, so what we're going to do is we're going to start with a new um, artboard. So you're just going to go File, New, and I made this board 15 by 10 at 300 pixels, and I used a white background. So you would go create. Since I've got it, I'm not going to do that. Okay, now I need to bring in the images that I've saved. So the first thing I'm going to bring into the background is the palette that I developed from Illustrator. So I'm going to go File, Place Embedded, and here's my messy desktop. Place. Okay, doesn't matter if it's left or right. It's a little low resolution, but that's okay. Hit enter to place it, and then I need to place the actual image. So I'm going to go File, Place Embedded, and then I'm going to pick the image that I've already cropped, saved, and there she goes right there. Now I want to make sure that the image is rasterized. So it may or may not, depending on how you've saved it. So I'm going to go to Layer, and then I'm going to go Rasterize, and then this is considered a smart object. So I'm going to go Rasterize Smart Object. Okay, and the reason I want to do that now is I'm going to make multiple layers of this, and I want them all to be rasterized. So I'm going to go ahead and make three more layers of this. So there's multiple ways of doing it. You could write, I can go up here too, I can go Layer, I go Duplicate Layer, okay, and then I'm going to go Layer, Duplicate Layer, okay, and then I'm going to go Layer, Duplicate Layer. Okay, now what I want to do is each one of these layers I want to fill with one of the colors, and it's going to be a lot easier to see how we go through the layers. So I'll just start with this top layer, and one of the things I need to do, because if I do the fill and I don't have a selection, it's going to fill the entire frame, and I don't want to do that. So I'm going to go to the little rectangle marked key tool here, and I'm going to select just the image, and then I'm going to go Edit, and I'm going to go Fill, and then I'm going to want to fill it with a color, but I want to change the mode to Overlay, which is right here, and I want the opacity for right now. Let's make the opacity 100%, and then I'm going to click on Color, and then what comes up is this little dialog box. So I can go over and select it. Now notice where it picks it up. It's probably because of the resolution. I really want this at its most highly saturated, so I'm going to select here, and then I'm going to hit OK, and then I'm going to hit OK, and what it does is it fills the entire layer. Now if that's too saturated, I can go over to the opacity scale here. I can bring this down a little bit, and you see it reduces the intensity. And you could always come back and do that if you wanted to. I'm just going to leave it. I'm going to leave it right about there. Okay. So I'm going to go to the next layer, and if you notice, I'm not going to delete the selection here. I am going to close this layer by hitting the. I'm not going to close it. I'm just going to turn it off. And now the selection continues. So the selection continues through all the different layers. So now I'm going to fill this with the orange. So I'm going to go Edit, Fill, and it's set at Overlay 100%. So all I have to do is color, select it again, and then I'm going to do this, and then I'm going to come over and make the most saturated. Okay, so I'm going to continue to do this, and I'll be back in a minute. Okay, I'm back, so I have all four layers, and you'll just see how they stack up here. Okay, now one of the things I want to do, so now I'm going to get out of this selection. I'm going to hit Command D on the Mac, and now what I want to do is I want to filter each one of these layers. So I want to make sure that I'm on the correct layer that I'm going to filter, and then I go to the filter gallery. I'm going to go filter, and I'm going to go to filter gallery. And I was working in cutout before, so I'm going to use that. I've got the number levels set at 8. If I wanted to have fewer levels, do something like this. I think for our purposes it's probably going to be better to have more levels. I could play around with edge simplicity. So this might be kind of fun to do something like this where it's not quite so representational. Do something like that, and I'm going to go OK. Now what I'm going to do is, now it looks like it changed the color just a little bit. It's a little bit warmer. That'll be okay. What I want to do is, I'm on this layer, and I'm going to start pulling out parts of the face to reveal the layer underneath. So I'm going to go to the quick selection tool, and maybe I'm going to pull out some of the forehead here. Okay, and then if I hit delete, it reveals the layer underneath. Let me do it again. I'm going to pull out these highlights. Okay. Now I might want to keep going, so I think what I'm going to do, and you can certainly mess around with your selection and add to, or so if I hit the option key, it'll bring back the selection so it's not so much. Something like that. Hit Command D to get out of it. The other thing I could do is I could make a very large selection like I did in the previous one that you saw. Now the thing to notice is how the values are all staying the same, even though the colors are shifting, the values are staying the same, and we want that. I could also do something like go to, let's say, the polygonal lasso tool, and I could make some really kind of bold gestures here in terms of making this a little bit more geometric in terms of the selection. And again, it's pretty easy to change it if I decided I don't like it. I can come down like this. I'm kind of following the contours of the face. Now delete that. Okay, so now I'm going to go to the next layer. So I'm going to turn this layer off, and I'm going to go to the next layer below. And one thing I can do that's kind of cool is, I could filter this, or I could, the way I made the stripes is I went to the rectangular marquee tool, and I just kind of eyeballed these stripes. I just hit delete, then I do another one. Now I'm going to hit Command E to get out of that selection. And then what I'm going to do is, I kind of want to pierce through this, but I want to see it in relationship to the top layer. So what I'm going to do is I'm turn the top layer, but I'm going to turn this layer off. And now I'm going to look at the two. Now, one of the things that I probably should do, you see the opacity is turned way down. So if I bring it up, it's gonna be a better representation of that color. Okay, so I have the orange layer turned off. Now what I want to do is I'm going to go ahead and cut through this eye again. And what I want to do though is I want to make the selection based on this layer. So I could go ahead and turn this off. go back, again, I could do it using the quick selection tool. I could do it like that, or I could go to the lasso tool and I could just kind of cut it out like this. This is more like drawing. The other thing I could do is go to the pen tool, and I would go to the curvature tool. Now I'm on CS 2019, and it might be in a slightly different place on yours, but what's nice about this is I can then pull these selections. I can get it right into play. If I wanted to, I can move it all the way over to here. So this is just a little bit more specific than the selection tool. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit the control key, and I'm going to go make selection. So I'm not going to feather it, and then that turns it into a selection. So that's kind of a pretty cool use of that tool. So I'm going to delete that. And I could also filter this. So once I've done that, I could go to the filter gallery, and I don't know if I want to do that again, but I could go to the texture panel. Maybe I do something like the stained glass, right? And I can adjust the cell size, and I can adjust the border thickness, and I prefer not to have much of a border. If you do that, then you start adding another color in there. So I'm going to do this, and then light intensity just changes how light you want it to be. I'm going to bring it down to where, so that's good. So now that's another layer. So let's turn these back on. And you can see it's starting to get really parted if there's all kinds of parts being built up here, okay? So the last thing I'm going to do, turn these off, and again, I want to maybe cut through this just a little bit more. Now what's interesting with this filter, if I go back to the selection tool, it's going to select it based on that new filter. Look at that. I'll turn these layers on. Okay. So if I wanted to get more of the cyan green in here, maybe I'd pull out some of this. But bottom line, you can see there's lots of ways to play around with this. Once you've got it how you like it, we need to change it into a JPEG, and then we'll flatten this. And just go File, Save, and there you go. You're ready to go. That's it.